and Booking.com have to pay more taxes? Will the new EU regulations restrain the activities in a common market? Let's find out. I'm Thibaut from Rental Scale Up, and this is a quick summary of a new article we published on rentalscaleup.com. So, to understand the issue here that Airbnb and Booking.com facing, you have to understand how the money is flowing towards the coffers of Airbnb and Booking.com, for example, in Europe. Imagine you're a property manager. You have a local business, you're paying local taxes in your own country. You may be listing with Airbnb and Booking.com. If so, if you're on Airbnb, you are paying host fees. If you're on Booking.com, you're paying partner commissions. If you look carefully, with Airbnb, you've signed a contract with Airbnb Ireland. This is where Airbnb's European activities are headquartered. Meanwhile, Booking.com's global headquarters is in the Netherlands. Your contract is signed with Booking.com Netherlands. So whenever you pay a commission or host fees, the money in Europe is flowing for Airbnb to Ireland and for Booking.com to the Netherlands. Nothing wrong with that. Again, it's their own choice to have their headquarters somewhere, and you are contracting with them. So whenever you're paying for a service to somebody whose company is headquarters somewhere in the EU, you pay money there. But you have to understand that money is basically flowing out of your own country to another country in the EU. And this is where the new G7 recommendations could be hitting. The first thing is that obviously Netherlands or Ireland or Luxembourg for Amazon, for example, are countries that usually have lower corporate taxes and bigger countries like France or Germany. And usually also they are ready to make sweetheart deals with big companies. What sweetheart deals basically is when you have for big companies that you want to retain in your small country, you really want to you're ready to basically lower even the tax rate they're paying, even lower than your national official tax rate. That could be the case for Airbnb, or that could be the case for Booking.com on part of their revenues. Who knows? But even if it's not true, for the moment in Ireland, for example, where Airbnb's European headquarters is, the corporate tax is 12.5%. So if the G7 recommendations comes into place, then the tax would raise to 15% at least. Obviously, that would be a small blow to Airbnb, and the Irish are really fighting against these recommendations. Another one is that, as I said earlier, if you're in the EU or in Europe actually, the money you're paying as a host, as a partner, is flowing out of your country and going to another country. Again, nothing wrong with that, but what happens here, what the G7 really wants, is that companies like Amazon, Facebook, or all these companies that are very tax savvy start paying more taxes, in the countries where they make the most sales. Think in the case, and that could be the case for Airbnb and Booking. For example, France is a big market as a destination for both Airbnb and for both Airbnb and Booking.com. But what's very interesting, for example, in the case of let's say Booking.com, is that even if I'm a foreigner booking a place in France, for example, as a guest, I'm not paying anything. There's no guest fee, right? I'm paying money to the host or to the partner. It's the partner, the Booking.com partner, that pays a commission for advertising on Booking.com. So the money will leave France to go to the Netherlands in this case. So the sales are happening in France. What the G7 recommends that if a company makes more than 10% of its global sales in one country, then it should pay taxes for that money in this very country. So for example, if Airbnb or Booking.com were to make more than 10% of their sales in France, then the money they're making there, the sales they're making there, will be taxed. And I think the G7 is proposing a 20% tax here, which obviously, again, for Airbnb is more than 12.5% they're paying in Ireland. The last thing to have in mind, that right now, Airbnb and Booking.com are having a discussion with the EU about the new Digital Services Act. It's very interesting, and look in the article, there's more details about that, because there's open discussion from Airbnb and from Booking.com. They've published their opinion on the text because the EU wants to hear from them, and I've linked to Airbnb's response. I've linked to Booking.com's public affairs blog post, which is really, really interesting, where they explain their viewpoint. Basically, what's the idea here? Again, the idea for the EU is to say, like, there's big companies like Facebook or Amazon, for example, who are maybe too big to prevent new competitors to enter the market. Think, for example, of Google, right? Google, if you want to launch a comparison shopping site, it's very hard, because whenever you type something in Google, Google is pushing its own comparison shopping sites, or its own flight comparison sites, or its own hotel comparison site. So how do you enter the market? So is it unfair for smaller companies? So that's what this text is about. And here, interestingly, Booking.com and Airbnb have been pulled by the EU into the discussions. Are they also what the EU calls gatekeepers? These big companies, these very large online platforms, that's the term, that prevent small entrants to get into the market. So again, look in the article, the answers from Airbnb and Booking.com are interesting. For example, Airbnb says that the issue is that maybe the EU has the wrong definition. They are a large platform, but they're not advertising based like Google and Facebook. So the value creation or the behaviors are very different. You cannot compare a company like Booking, Airbnb, or Zalando with advertising based companies like Facebook or Amazon. Or Facebook, sorry, or Google. Another point Airbnb is making is that if this results into yet more constraints on suppliers advertising on Airbnb and Booking, then it's going to basically make people run away from hosting. If you're in the EU already, you know that you've been asked by Airbnb and Booking to tell them whether you're a professional or individual host, which actually is very hard to explain sometimes. Why? Because the EU wanted Booking.com and Airbnb to collect this information, as part of a regulation. Another point that Booking.com is making is that, okay, the text really wants these big platforms to remove illegal content from their websites. And Booking.com is saying, oh, illegal content, for example, you mean illegal listings? Then actually the text should be bolder. It's very interesting, because in a way you could imagine that if you compare Airbnb and Booking.com, probably Airbnb is the one who's supposedly has been more lenient towards illegal listings in the past. So I don't know. When Booking.com says that the EU should be bolder for removing illegal listings, I cannot help but think that they have someone in mind who's headquartered in Ireland. There that they're targeting nicely and funnily in their text. So if you want to know more about these things, I've really detailed this in the article on rentalsclub.com. There's a link to all the official texts. There's more development on what really this means for each company. Again, nothing illegal here. The idea is really to look like, okay, if the G7 text comes into law, or what would be the impact on these multinational companies, or what are the implications of the new EU act that's going to be maybe passed very soon. You can find out on rentalsclub.com. Cheers.